friends, it's Amanda here, and today we're talking about the newest palette from Urban Decay. It's the Naked Ultraviolet palette. This palette is priced at $49 US. This palette is currently available from Urban Decay's website as well as Sephora online, and it's gonna roll out to the other retailers online and in-store on July 5th. So you'll be able to find it in Sephora stores, Ulta, Macy's, Nordstrom, and from QVC. Urban Decay did send this palette to me. Even if they didn't, I was planning on purchasing it myself because I love purple eyeshadow. So I am going to be showing you close-ups, swatches, a tutorial, giving you my review. First, let's just talk about a little bit of product info. The packaging has this really pretty purpley, geode type of look to it. And I don't know if it's coming across on camera, but the palette itself has this shimmer throughout the pattern as well. It's super, super pretty. This has to be some of the prettiest packaging I've ever seen from Urban Decay. This palette is the same shape and size as the other Naked palettes. It is a heavy-duty plastic packaging, and it does have a very satisfying magnetic closure. Now when we take a look inside, there is of course a mirror in here. It also comes with a double-ended brush. So the dual-ended brush has a little smudging brush, be good for doing some smoky looks. Then on the other end we get a fluffier tapered blending type of brush. The bristles feel pretty soft, pretty nice. These are synthetic bristles. I'm not big on using the brushes that come in palettes, but the Urban Decay ones are pretty decent. Now looking at the eyeshadow pans in here, we have 12 shadow shades. They do have the shade names labeled inside next to the pans. There are a lot of different finishes in here. There are only 3 true mattes. So this lighter peachy shade called Mind Slip. Then there's this mauvey matte shade called Hacked, and a matte pale lavender shade. This one's called Optimized. The very first shade here called Trippin' is kind of a satiny shade, but for me this performs very much like a matte. It's just not really a true matte, it's more of a satin type of shade. Then when it comes to the shimmer shades, there are 2 different finishes in here. We have a softer shimmer that doesn't have a lot of glitter particles, not very metallic. So Lucid, Warning, Euphoric, and Digital are more of a softer shimmer. They're definitely not that borderline satiny matte shade like Trippin', but they're not in your face glittery or very, very metallic. And then Dazed, VR, Cyberpunk, and Purple Dust are super intensely metallic. They have a lot of micro glitters in them. They're much more intense metallic shimmers. When this palette was first revealed, first of all, I love purple eyeshadow, so I was really, really excited. But I was also a little bit nervous with all of these purple shades that we would be getting a lot of eye safety warnings, a lot of pigment warnings. That does not seem to be the case. There are no eye safety warnings on the box or on the palette. This is very, very clearly called an eyeshadow palette, and generally when there are a lot of not eye safe pigments in a palette, they'll call it a pigment palette and not an eyeshadow palette. This is definitely called an eyeshadow palette. Between no eye safety warnings on the box or the palette and the fact that it is very clearly marked as an eyeshadow palette and not a pigment palette leads me to believe that there's no cause for concern as far as eye safety goes with these shades. So let's hope that's the case. Now that you've got the product info, let's do some swatches of this palette. I am going to be showing you both finger and brush swatches. The swatches are done on the inside of my arm with no primer down first, just the shadows straight onto my skin. The finger swatches will be on top, and then each corresponding brush swatch will be directly below. As always, for my brush swatches, I'll be using my e.l.f. flat eyeshadow brush, and I'll clean the brush off in between each shade using my Veramona color switch. That way there's no transfer between swatches. So let's take a look at those swatches now. I also wanted to mention that these brush swatches are done with a completely dry brush. Later on in the review portion, I'll show you the shade Warning applied with a damp brush. Particularly the softer and less metallic shimmer shades really do benefit from a damp brush application if you're looking for more opaque coverage. So if you're not, that is coming later in the video. Now that you've seen the palette swatched, let's take a look at an eyeshadow tutorial using this Ultraviolet palette. I'll show you how I got this look that I'm wearing today, and then I'll wrap up all my thoughts at the end. I'm starting my look just like I always do by priming with my favorite eye base. It's the MAC Paint Pot in the shade Painterly. Then I use the shade Trippin' to just lightly set that eye base. This really does perform much like a matte, as you can see on the lid here. Next, I'm using Hacked as my transition shade, and this is a lot more pigmented than I expected it to be, so I'm just really gently working that into the crease area using a little fluffy crease brush. Next, I'm going to add some depth to the outer part of my eye using this shade called Purple Dust. I'm just applying that with my ring finger, and you can see I'm sort of tapping it on and then pressing it into the lid. Now for the inner part of my lid, I'm using the shade Euphoric. Again, I'm applying this with my fingertip and I'm just swiping that onto the inner half of my eyelid. Then where those two shades meet, I'm mixing Warning and Cyberpunk. I just dipped my finger into both of those shades, and then I'm sort of blending the lighter shade on the inner corner with the darker on the outer part, just so that I have a little pop of bright pinky purple there. Then to bring a little bit more warmth, I mixed Mind Slip and Hacked for the crease. And now for a bit of a faux liner, I'm using Purple Dust and Digital on a small pencil brush, putting that right along the lash line on both upper and lower lashes for a little bit of a smoky look. And then I used Warning on a small flat brush, starting on the inner corner, and sort of smoked out that lower lash line again to bring a little warmth. Lastly, one of my favorite shades in this palette, Lucid, I'm applying just with my pinky finger right on the very inner corner. I love a bright highlighted inner corner. Curled my lashes, added my Wander Beauty Unlashed mascara, and that's my finished look. I love purple eyeshadow, so it is not difficult for me to create a look that I really enjoy with this Ultraviolet palette. I think the balance of cool tones and warm tones really make a dynamic and beautiful look, and as you saw, it's pretty easy to create something interesting without a lot of really in-depth technique, which is kind of my jam. Ever since this palette was revealed online, there's been a lot of talk, there's been a lot of praise, there's been a lot of criticism. I do think that some of the criticisms are warranted, but I'll just say up front, I really like this palette. The main criticism that I've heard that I agree with is that there's not enough mattes in the palette. There's only 3 true mattes. They're all on the lighter side. Personally, I would love to see this last shade that's kind of a brownish purple swapped out for a deep purple matte instead. While there is a great range of light, medium, deep shades in this palette, there's not a good range of mattes, and I think that that is kind of limiting. So I would have loved to see a deep royal purple in a matte finish in place of this very last shade here called Digital. That is the main #1 thing that I would change about this palette. Now, the other big criticism of this palette is that it's not purple enough. The first half of the palette are definitely more neutral shades. The last half of the palette is where we're finding those purples. Personally, I don't have a problem with that for 2 reasons. First of all, I love palettes that are part neutral and part colorful. I just find them to be incredibly useful, really dynamic in the number of looks that you can get. I love mixing neutral shades with colorful shades. You could definitely do a very monochromatic purple look. You could do an all neutral look. The way I'll be using it is by mixing the 2 together. So I actually love that about this palette. I don't mind it at all. But let's also keep in mind, this is a Naked palette. It has to have neutrals in it because it's part of the Naked palette family. And Urban Decay is not marketing this as a purple palette. I'll show you some of the marketing from Instagram that I took a screenshot of. They are very clearly marketing this palette as neutrals with a pop of purple. And that's really the only thing that makes sense if they wanted to have this as a part of the Naked palette family. I would 100% be on board with a very, very purple palette from Urban Decay. I mean, I love purple palettes. I love purple eyeshadow, but that's not what they're billing this as. So I just think that's not really a fair criticism because they're not saying it's a purple palette. Hopefully that makes sense. If you want a purple palette, there are purple palettes, you know? So despite the fact that I am missing a little bit of purple matte in here, overall, I feel like this color scheme is beautiful. It's super useful. I love it. I love that there's a bunch of different finishes in here. I love that we're getting some of these more sort of warmer tones mixed with cooler tones, lighter shades, deeper shades, a little bit more muted, a little bit more pop of color. A palette like this just has a lot of versatility. You're gonna get a lot of looks out of it. Personally, I am super happy with it. As you saw from the swatches as well as the tutorial, these shades can layer and mix really nicely together. So some of these shades are a little bit lighter. They're not that super, super opaque, heavy coverage type of shadow. I'm going to take this shade called Warning as a good example. So I'm going to do just a little dry brush swatch, even though you already saw that in the swatch portion of the evening. So here's a quick little dry brush swatch of the shade called Warning. I know it looks a little soft, it looks a little sheer. Sometimes really sheer shades like this catch a little bit of heat because we've been very spoiled by super, super pigmented palettes in the past. So I want to show you how really dynamic shades like this can be. So this is a damp brush. So if you find yourself saying, oh, I wish that was more metallic, I wish it was brighter, you know, I wish it had more color payoff. If you just add a little bit of setting spray to your brush before you apply it, then you can get a lot bolder color payoff. So that's the dry brush swatch, and then that's the damp brush swatch. This would be a really great sort of sheer wash of color or a topper. And then if you really want to go for it, kind of an all over bold lid look, then you just dampen your brush a little bit and there you go. I just love this neutral meets purple color story. I love the shadows. I love the mix of finishes. I love that there's some really beautiful duochromes in here. Really, really sparkly metallic shades. These are all things that I just love and I just want in a palette. And you pair that with this packaging and you get my vote. I am definitely going to be using and loving this palette. Now's the time when I want to hear what you think about this new Naked Ultraviolet palette. Are you interested? Is it not enough mattes? Too many neutrals? I always love to hear what you guys think about things too. Even if we disagree on things, that is perfectly fine. Not everything is for everybody. Make sure you leave all your comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Cute. What? Not having any eyes. I don't even know what that was gonna be. And this is barely clearly. Hopefully that made sense. I don't know if it did or not. This lucid shade on the inner corners is so sublime. It's beautiful. Ugh. Okay. Did you hear that? Oof. I feel like... Huh? What? What are you trying to say? You got anything to say? Because I'm out of words. Why did I say that? That was awkward. Instead of matching nails, I kind of have contrast nails now. This nail polish color is so pretty though. I am really, really hooked on it. It's from Triple O Polish. I've just been addicted to Triple O Polish nail polishes lately, so buckle up because you're going to be seeing a lot of them. They have a really pretty purple one too that I bought, but I just couldn't resist this color. I love it so much. Okay, that is all she wrote. Okay, have a great day. I love your face. Wash your hands and be responsible human beings that I know you are. That's why I love your faces so much. Bye.